Hello, good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Dan Walker and Louise Minchin.
The headlines for you this morning. Special Forces board an oil tanker and detain 7 stowaways after a suspected hijacking off the Isle of Wight.
Frank Bough, the original host of Breakfast Time and the face of the BBC for decades, has died aged 87.
The government's original furlough scheme ends this week. I'll have more details about what's replacing it.
Good morning. An historic day for British sport. Lewis Hamilton breaks Michael Schumacher's all-time record for race wins, whilst Teo Geoghegan-Hart is victorious at the Giro d'Italia.
And the moment a music teacher with dementia hears his composition played by an orchestra for the very first time.
Good morning from Arundel Castle in West Sussex, where it's a chilly start to the day. We're going to be talking stew ponds throughout the course of this morning. And the forecast for this week, well, it'll be windy at times, wet at times, but by the end of the week, it will also be quite mild. I'll have more details in about 10 minutes.
Very good morning. It's a Monday, the 26th of October. Our main story, a Navy Special Forces unit has stormed an oil tanker off the Isle of Wight after a suspected hijacking.
7 stowaways, thought to be Nigerian nationals, have been detained after they were reported to have threatened the crew. Andy Moore has the details.
Late last night, and the tanker Andromeda was back under the control of its crew after what the Ministry of Defence called a suspected hijacking. 16 members of the Special Boat Squadron based at nearby Poole were landed on the ship as night fell. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said, "In dark skies and worsening weather, we should all be grateful for our brave personnel. People are safe tonight thanks to their efforts."
What is good to see is the reaction from our forces, the coordination between our agencies. Number 10 would have been fully involved in what was going on. Indeed, this is a good outcome for Britain.
The drama began yesterday morning as the ship prepared to enter the Fawley oil refinery near Southampton. 7 stowaways, believed to be Nigerians, are said to have become violent and made verbal threats to the crew. They retreated to a safe place on board the ship. There are a few official details from the Ministry of Defence, but it's understood several military helicopters landed heavily armed troops by rope onto the deck of the ship. Faced with overwhelming force, the stowaways are said to have surrendered almost immediately.
This is a very efficient operation. It only took 9 minutes from the word go to the stowaways being rounded up and identified. And of course, this reflects the training that both the Fleet Air Arm crews and the SBS, the Special Boat Service, undertake all the time.
None of the 22 crew of the Andromeda were injured in the incident. The 7 stowaways have been detained. Andy Moore, BBC News.
Frank Bough, one of the most familiar faces on BBC television for many years, has died at the age of 87.
He presented Grandstand nationwide and launched the forerunner of this programme, Breakfast Time, in 1983. David Silito reports.
In the studios, they celebrated.
1983, and a TV landmark, the birth of breakfast television in Britain. And the man presenting was Frank Bough.
It's 6:30, Monday.
He was one of the few people totally at ease with the hours of live television. His career went back to the 60s. He'd done Match of the Day, Grandstand, and 10 years of Nationwide before launching Breakfast Time with Selena Scott and Nick Ross.
Must be awfully...
A good job.
Keep it up, We've only been going for about a minute. Do you think we're winning so far?
I think we're winning. Yeah, I think we're winning. You know,
Frank Bough was also a familiar face on the holiday programme, trundling around cities with his wife Nesta. He presented an image of gentle, affable, easygoing respectability.
Well, you've now got me on tenterhooks because I know you've always wanted to come to Siena. Are you disappointed?
It was then a bit of a shock when he appeared on the front of the News of the World confessing to using drugs and attending sex parties. His BBC career came to an end. He did continue to work for ITV, Sky and LBC, but the revelations always cast a shadow. The private and the public Frank Bough may have been rather different, but his long career was a testament to his skill and ease in front of a live TV camera. David Silito, BBC News.
Frank Bough, who died last Wednesday at the age of 87 and will be joined by some of his former colleagues throughout the morning, including Nick Ross, who helped launch Breakfast Television.
Elsewhere this morning, retailers will be meeting with the Welsh Government today to clarify the ban on selling non-essential items in supermarkets. More than 60,000 people have signed a petition calling for the restrictions, which have stopped people buying items like clothes and toys, to be lifted. First Minister Mark Drakeford has said the implementation of the rules may be tweaked, but the ban would not be reversed.
Ministers are continuing to insist they will not fund school meal vouchers for children in England during the half-term holiday, despite calls for a rethink from some Conservative MPs.
The government has come under quite a bit of pressure on the issue following a high-profile campaign by the footballer Marcus Rashford. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have already introduced food voucher schemes. Our political correspondent Jonathan Blake joins us this morning from Westminster. Morning to you, Jonathan. So, will the government change their minds? There's a lot of pressure out there, as we mentioned.
Morning, Dan, Louise. Yes, there is a lot of pressure. It doesn't seem that ministers are in the mood to change their minds at the moment. But as we've seen, Marcus Rashford's campaign has proved to be incredibly effective already so far this year. And the government was forced into a U-turn earlier on in the year. They make the point, though, ministers just now, that a couple of things have changed since then. Firstly, they've increased availability for payments under the Universal Credit System of benefits, and also the government has given something in the region of £60 million to local authorities in England to spend in support of families who are struggling. And that's why we've seen some already provide a food voucher scheme, others issuing food parcels, although some councils are already warning that that money is running out or has run out. So a couple of indications that this issue isn't going away now half term has come here in England. 870,000 people and counting have signed a petition by Marcus Rashford online to get the government to change its stance. Labour are saying that they will force another vote in the House of Commons if the government doesn't change its policy. And there are a number of Conservative MPs who are themselves very uneasy about the way the government has handled this, and also some saying that there does need to be a rethink. So last time MPs voted on this issue, the government won comfortably, just a handful of Tories rebelling. They would not want to put that to the test again.
OK, Jonathan, thank you very much. We'll have the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, here at 7:30 this morning.
Meanwhile, Marcus Rashford has been given another award for his work on the Free School Meals campaign. The Manchester United forward said he is extremely humbled to receive the Pride of Britain award and said he will dedicate it to those who've helped their communities during the pandemic.
New restrictions have come into force today in Italy in an attempt to slow down their soaring infection rate.
All restaurants and bars will finish table service at 6 p.m. and gyms, pools and cinemas will close. The measures will be in place for a month. Mark Lowen reports from Rome.
Waiting, not on tables, but on news of their future. Worried staff at a prime Roman restaurant in a crisis meeting over new measures. Inside, they prepared the last suppers. From today, they'll close at 6 p.m, only takeaway after that. The family business was just starting to recover from the first wave.
We are really worried about it, for sure. You know, it's a very difficult situation, and September was the first month for us that we started to go in the right way. So now we have to stop again. All our life is here. We are 4 families with son, with children, with babies, and we love this job.
The Prime Minister announced a looser lockdown than last time, a maximum of 4 people at tables, gyms, pools, cinemas and theatres closed. Italians advised to move around only if necessary. He knows patience is wearing thin. Protests by fringe groups against restrictions turned ugly this weekend. Its economy already forecast to shrink by 10% this year. Italy can't afford a second shutdown. But with soaring cases, the government says Italy needs another push to get the virus under control. Its management of the pandemic has been widely supported here. But with venues closing again, the mood may change, and there'll be no gyms to let off steam.
Of course, that will undermine our just overall sanity, I think, both physically and mentally. And I don't think amongst the many decisions which could have been taken, I think that this one in particular was perhaps, a bit rushed or not really necessary, not amongst them. It could have been dealt with differently.
It's too serious not to act. Over 1,200 are now in intensive care, up almost 1,000 since last month. The first country in the West crushed by the pandemic is seeing a grim history repeating itself, and hopes it's not too late to turn the tide. Mark Lowen, BBC News, Rome.
It's 6:10 and it's cold out this morning.
Oh, proper chilly.
We've got evidence of that as well from Carol, who's in the grounds of Arundel Castle for us this morning. All wrapped up though. Morning, Carol.
Good morning, Lou and Dan. Good morning to you too. You're quite right. It is a chilly start to the day here in West Sussex. It is across many areas this morning as well, particularly rural areas. Now we're here because behind me you can see what's called a stew pond. So called because in the days of yore it used to provide fish for the priory and the castle kitchens for their fish stew, and rather lovely it is as well. It's just newly been renovated by the head gardener Martin, and we'll be talking to him about that later on in the programme. It's quite ethereal as well because you can just see the mist above the water. Now the forecast for this week is quite mixed. We're looking at windy conditions at times, also some rain, also some sunshine, and by the end of the week, particularly in the south, it is going to be mild for the time of year. But this morning we're starting off, for many of us, on a dry note, particularly central and eastern areas. We do have some showers across the north and also the west, and a few in the Channel Coast as well. And as we go through the course of the day, more of those showers will develop and more of them will travel eastwards too. Some of them could well be heavy, with the chance of some thunder. Temperatures 10 to 14 degrees with the winds easing. As we head on through the evening and overnight, a little ridge of high pressure pulls across us. That settles things down. It kills off a lot of the showers. But by the end of the night, a new weather front's going to be coming in, bringing rain across Northern Ireland, in through Wales and the southwest. And the wind will also be picking up. Through tomorrow, that band of rain continues to edge northeastwards, the Northern Isles hanging onto the sunshine for the longest spell of time. And behind that rain, in parts of the southwestern Wales, we'll see some brighter skies, but also some heavy showers, again with a chance of some hail and some thunder. And don't forget the wind as well, picking up, particularly with exposure. Now, I'll have a full weather forecast looking through the week ahead in about half an hour. But for now, back to Lou and Dan.
Carol, it does look, really cold out there this morning. Thank you very much for being there, and we'll see you later.
I had to put the hood up walking in today.
Oh, no.
Not very chilly, Louise.
I did see you wearing your biggest coat, which I've seen quite a lot over the last few years.
Yeah.
It's back.
You always dig it
It's
out when
officially
it's really
winter
cold.
when Dan has got his big coat.
It's a big one as well.
Well, it's not winter, is it? It's
No,
autumn.
not yet.
So having a look at the papers this morning, several of the front pages are dominated by images of an oil tanker which was seized by 7 stowaways reportedly off the coast of the Isle of Wight yesterday. The lead picture in the Metro is of the moment special forces stormed the vessel.
The Times leads with the same story. The paper reports that 4 military helicopters took 40 personnel to the scene of the suspected hijack after a Mayday call, which was yesterday morning.
The Guardian says there's growing pressure on Downing Street to make a U-turn on providing meal vouchers during the school holidays. In England, the front page also features Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton following his world record-breaking win yesterday.
And we mentioned this story already. Marcus, the Pride of Britain, is the headline on the front page of the Daily Mirror this morning. The paper is awarding the footballer for his campaign on free school meals, which has been much talked about over the course of the week. I think he's still tweeting, isn't he? He's still tweeting places that are helping out this week.
It's extraordinary the amount of people who are offering
amazing,
to help. This you like? You like this? You might be scared by this actually. Killer Hornets. Look at this. This is I love the headline there. A sting operation. They are Asian giant hornets, and these people armed with full face masks, thick protective suits took on this mission. They're flushing out the first known nest of murder hornets, they're called, in America, with a vacuum cleaner. I think it's quite a sophisticated, it's not a normal vacuum cleaner. They were vacuumed out of the tree and into a tube. They attack in groups, have a venomous sting which kills around 40 people in China and Japan every year.
Ooh.
I know.
Big old units as well, like proper hornets. They're big.
Yeah, they look really, very nasty. In the early hours of Saturday, they filled the cavity of a tree with foam, covered it with plastic wrap to stop the hornets escaping, and then they were sucked into a tube using a powerful vacuum and will be frozen and kept for further study.
Not taking any chances for those
No, they
suits,
were not.
are they? Strictly. Did you watch Strictly at the weekend?
Yeah.
It's got a massive audience for Strictly Come Dancing.
I'm not surprised, are you? We all need
I know,
something
I know,
sparkling
a
in
little
our
spark.
lives.
Well, did you see Caroline Quentin? Lots of people enjoyed her just sort of crying with enjoyment.
With the joy.
Yes. They say it went. Hold on. You can't make a Strictly story without some sort of dance reference somewhere. So they went charging back with 1.6 million more viewers than last year. This is Jason Bell, who was one of the stars on Strictly, but lots of people talking about Harvey and his jive with the person with the best name in TV, Jeanette Manrara. They finished off the evening and they were brilliant. I mean, he was spectacularly good.
Am I being really stupid? But do they always put the people who are best, they think are best last?
I don't know. It's because sometimes they put them at the start, don't they, to sort of kick it off in a nice way. But Motsi Mabuse said it was the best first dance ever in Strictly history.
It was absolutely brilliant. I don't know about you, but there's lots of apples where I live. A cider brewer has been inundated with donations of apples as an orchard renaissance starts to bear fruit in England. A London-based cider company sent 12 tons of apples in the post after launching a trial delivery scheme to encourage volunteers to swap russets and royals for bottles from last year's crop. That's a great idea, isn't it? So you donate the apples and in exchange you get last year's apple juice. Isn't that brilliant?
That's a very clever
not
idea.
Actually cider.
There's loads of stuff on the back pages today about Teo Geoghegan-Hart, the incredible cyclist.
What
we'll be
a
speaking
story.
to David Brailsford about that a little bit later on. And also Damon Hill's going to be here talking about Lewis Hamilton finally breaking Michael Schumacher's record. 92 races in Formula One he's done now, which is quite incredible. I want to tell you about this lady here. Her name is Joan Hockard, okay? And she sadly has passed away at the age of 112, but she was the oldest person in Britain. And it just tells you a little bit about her remarkable life. So she was born in 1908. During the reign of Edward VII. She had childhood in Kenya. Her father was a shipping officer. She went to boarding school. She was a cook in Geneva. She drove ambulances in London during the Second World War. She married some bloke who she... Some
bloke?
Well, no, just some bloke. A man called Gilbert. They had two boats moored next to each other, so they got chatting. They got married. In later life, she sort of travelled around the world on this boat, France, the Channel Islands, and around the islands of Scotland as well. Eventually, towards the end of her life, she lived with this other bloke called Kenneth down on the south coast.
Why do you call them gentlemen?
Gentleman, a lovely gentleman called Kenneth. And she said the secret to her long life
was what?
She just kept going. She never saw a doctor. She had no diet whatsoever. She ate what she wanted, and she always sought to live life to the full.
She lived to 112.
112. Now Lillian Priest is the oldest person in Britain. She's 111 and she lives in Swanage.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.